Hey guys, Bound to Divide here, and today I kind of wanted to just take you guys through three of my favorite Lane 8 melodies, and we can have a look at a bit of the music theory and a little bit of the sound design behind it and see what makes them tick. Okay, so my first and probably most favorite melody from Lane 8 is from his song The Flood. And this melody pretty much just grabs me by the emotion straight away from the very first 6 notes. Let's have a listen to it first and then we'll talk about it. So let's go through the kind of like music theory first of all and try and figure out what's happening with this melody. Just a warning, I'm not a music theory expert. I'm not trained. This is just going to be my subjective opinion of what's happening here. First thing I always like to do when I'm studying something is try and transpose it onto all the white keys so that I can kind of get it into either C major or A minor, because I kind of think in those keys most of the time, and I know which each key responds to in terms of like the scale degrees by heart. So I'm just going to do that quickly. So if we just move this around, we should eventually find a place where there's all white notes. And let's try A here. Yeah. So there we go. So now this looks like A minor / C major to me. Okay, so now we can kind of look at the scale degrees and figure out what's happening. So to me, this looks more like it's in a minor scale, even though on Beatport it says it's in major. And I guess when the rest of the song comes in, like the little arpeggio and stuff, it starts to sound more major. But initially it's kind of like melancholic and sad. And I think what's giving that vibe is if we had to treat these lower notes as the bass line, you can see it's got this movement from A, which is the first degree, to the third, to the second, which is like this 1-3-2 movement. And that's kind of quite like melancholic. So if I had to just quickly make an arc with that specific movement and just mute these notes, you can hear it's quite a dark kind of movement. So I think treating this as the bass line kind of gives you that vibe, and partly for the reason for that melancholy that you experience is it's got to do, I think, with the half-step relationship between these two notes. So from the C down to the B, that half-step relationship in music theory is always kind of like melancholic or sad. So if we just listen to the bass notes, yeah, it's kind of like dark. But then he's kind of like really brightening up the harmony of this melody by adding this G here. And the G is the 7th note in the scale, which is the leading tone. It's also the 7th of our first chord. So if we're in A minor here, that's our A minor 7th chord, which is kind of like quite a bright tone in the chord. Some people might call it jazzy, but I guess in the context of this, we don't have like all the rest of the notes in between the A and the G. So it gives us just like really bright, uplifting, like major tone that's in there. And if we had to try out different notes here, see how they might feel, maybe like using the 5th. That's also quite a nice one, quite a powerful note. But for sure, I think he made the right choice by using this note. Let's try the 6th. Oh, that's kind of like dark and eerie. Yeah, I really like the 7th here, so I mean, that's pretty much all I have to say about that melody. If we just go back down to where it originally was, where was it? Okay, then So that's not the only thing that makes this tick. Very clearly, the sound helps a lot. I mean, if you had to take this and play it on something else, it might not be as effective. And I think what makes it so effective is if you listen to the original, he's got like all these subtle movements, and he does this quite a lot in his other melodies. You'll see I have like quite a lot of automation. So if you pay attention to certain notes, like I've lengthened the attack on some of them, brought down the envelope depth so it gets a bit darker, and yeah, that's these constant like subtleties really help. Also, if you go into Diva, you can go and have a look at this trimmers tab, and you can start adding some variation with that. So you could go in here and like add variation to the envelope. But in this one, where I added the variation was using LFO2 and assigning it to the cutoff over here. So the cutoff has this random glide on it, which basically creates a random value, and when it changes between these values, it slides between them. And because this is constantly and randomly happening, you get like these kind of really alive sounding patches. And shout out to Anama for this idea. It's actually a modification of one of his patches. If you want to go and check out his Patreon, he provided us with some really nice presets, and one of them is called Gentle Pluck, which I modified to get the sound from this one. So yeah, this is a really nice patch, and it's just like so nice and gentle and soft and alive sounding. And by the way, I added all the patches from this tutorial to my Dreams and Visions preset packs. So if you already own them, I've sent out an update already with these patches in them. Okay, so the second melody is Atlas. I'm sure everybody's very well aware of this song. So yeah, let's listen to the melody. Okay, so I'm just going to shift this up onto the white notes, like I said, so we can do a little bit of analysis here. And the first thing I notice is that, we've got this half-step relationship again, like I mentioned in the previous melody. And I've noticed he uses this quite a lot, and I think it's effective because Lane seems to write quite often in major, and one of the ways you can take a major key and prevent it from sounding too like nursery rhymey and jolly and happy is to use that half-step relationship more often when you write your melodies. So yeah, he repeats this like little half-step relationship, and then basically just creates this melody where you're really mainly paying attention to this top line over here, because these aren't really changing. There's not much in terms of analysis that I noticed that's like interesting here, or I didn't really get many takeaways from the melody itself. Mostly I think what's interesting about this is the actual sound. So let's have a look at that. So the main part of the sound is actually coming from the FM from B here in Serum. If I turn that off, completely different pluck. So what's happening here is we have an oscillator that's pitched up one octave, and we have one that's at the original octave of 0 over here. And these are both triangle waves. And then as I increase FM over here, the frequency of this oscillator is modulating the frequency of this one. So it's like pitching up and down really fast, and then it starts creating these harmonics that you pretty much can't get any other way. So I'm going to play it and then just start increasing FM, and you'll hear how this changes. And I think right about there is the sweet spot where you get that tone that he has in there. The rest of the sound is pretty standard. We've just got some white noise over here. We've got an envelope that's controlling the white noise, bringing it in and out. And that envelope's also taking this cutoff filter and moving it up and down. And then we've got a delay on here that's really fast, set to 1/32 in ping pong mode. And then the mix-up is up over here. And that kind of is what's putting it in its space. There isn't actually any reverb on here. I didn't think the reverb was actually necessary. So yeah, I took that off, and then we've got this EQ over here, which is just kind of taking out any sub, because you'll notice that FM starts to also add like a bunch of harmonics and stuff below the fundamental. So you've got to take that out. And then I'm also scooping out a little bit of the low mid-range here. Okay, and then lastly, my other favorite melody from him is Road. That sounds like this. Okay, so if we have a look at this one, we're looking at a bit more of a harmony in this one. It's not really like your classic monophonic melody. We've got two notes, and they're kind of creating these like, I guess you'd call them like two-tone chords. I know in the original song, there's also like a sub underneath that's like playing a different kind of bass line, and that if you looked at those together, you could probably construct a chord in your head. But I'm mainly just focusing on how this sounds in isolation because I really like it, and I think this is where the main sort of emotion is coming from. So let's drag all of these first into C major or A minor. Let's see, I think if we pitch that up one, yep, that'll work. So now our bottom note's playing C, so we could kind of think of this melody in C major. And so if we have a look at the first two notes, that's C, G, which is basically like your perfect fifth C major chord without the middle note. So it's kind of, yeah, it's just playing a fifth over here. And then we go down to this C, F. And how you could think of this would be maybe like a suspended, a sus4 chord. So if you think of, if you know what a sus4 chord is, it's basically where you take like a triad. So let's just imagine a C major triad here. And a sus4 chord would be where you move the third, so the middle note up to the next available note in the scale. And a sus2 chord would be if you moved it down to the next available note, so down to the D. And this is how a sus4 chord sounds. And they are like really emotional, and they sort of have the purpose of creating tension because they kind of want to resolve back to their standard chord. So you might hear this quite a lot in music where they have like a sus4 chord resolving to a standard major or minor triad like this, which is a really nice movement. So yeah, over here this just looks like a sus4 chord to me without the fifth in it. And it's over here we have that resolution that I was talking about, where we've taken that 4 and we've moved it back down to what would be its standard position in the C major triad. And then over here is the first time we actually hear that C major triad. So it seems like all he's really doing here is kind of playing around with the C major chord. And so over here we've got the fifth, over here we've taken it down to that fourth, and then over here we finally visit that major third, and then back to that suspended chord. And then the other part to this is also the sound design. This is a really simple patch. So here it's just a saw wave. You can see over here we're only using one oscillator, saw wave, and then we've got the cutoff filter down a little bit here. And we're modulating the cutoff filter with envelope 2, which has a bit of a longer attack to make it not like a pluck, but more like a sweepy kind of pluck. I don't know what you call it, like a short swell. So if I bring this down, you'll hear what I'm talking about. And the same thing with the amp envelope is up there. So if I had to bring these both down, it'll become super plucky. And you bring them up and it kind of sweeps up open. Yeah, so then we've got this plate reverb on here, just very subtly. Just adding a very gentle reverb on there. And then I noticed that it sounded almost like he had created 2 copies and panned them left and right and delayed the one, so like a harsh delay. And the simple way to do that would be to use this preset in Ableton called Simple Chorus. But when you load it up, it'll look a bit different to this. So yeah, I just set the left to 1 and the right is pretty much, I mean, you could leave it at 27, but you'll hear that this sounds like all phasey, and I guess because I tried to emulate a chorus. And you can stop it from sounding like that by just changing these parameters to their default by double clicking on the numbers here. And that takes away that like phasey, chorusy sound. Bring the dry weight up to 100%. And then you can kind of like dial in the frequencies that you want. This is basically like using an EQ really. Yeah, so that's it for my top 3 favorite Lane 8 melodies. I hope you learned a thing or two. If you want to grab these presets, they are a part of my Dreams and Visions preset packs on shop.basicwaves.com. And if you already own the packs, I sent out an update this morning with the new presets in them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.